to go on to Instagram Live. Mr. Breezy Live.
Yes,
Chris, how are you doing?
I'm good. And yourself?
I'm awesome. With a sip of coffee, Nochal.
I feel like I'm going to need it for this conversation, so I thought, let me come prepared.
Ne? Yeah. It's you and me both. I've got mine, even though it's cold.
Are we going to do Facebook as well?
On Facebook, I was trying to add you, but I'm not exactly seeing where that is. I somehow managed to figure this thing out on Instagram, but not really on Facebook.
Okay. All right. I think let's continue.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, it's interesting that you and I are talking now, and we've never actually physically ever met.
Yeah. Newsflash for everyone joining in.
Yeah. I think for the sake of time and from all the comments that I've been seeing as well on the platforms, there's a lot of interest in the topic. And I think it's proper for us to just do a context onto what exactly informs this topic. For those of you who don't know, Chris is married to an exceptional person, exceptional woman who's achieved a lot in her career, and that person happens to be a friend of mine, Usongoba. And it's amazing that when you look at how things happen, a lot of the women who tend to achieve a lot, particularly career-wise, and go and progress and do so many things, they are often single. And when you tend to inquire as to, but what's going on, men are somewhat intimidated by them, not sure why. Maybe it's because the perceived power that they see, or maybe there are other relationship dynamics that happen in their lives or in the relationship. But it was both a joy and an intrigue for me when you, Lutando, got to love this woman who is powerful. I mean, if you look at her profile, you would see the achievements that she's been through, and it would have been easy for you to be intimidated, but you were not. And I believe that plays a very important role in terms of who you are as a person, what you believe in, how you see yourself in relation to her achievements. It says a lot in terms of the fact that you saw a need, or you saw a place where you actually fit in, and you saw how you could come into her life and invite her into your life, and you both could walk this journey together, which is something I'm not sure why most men struggle with. And so that intrigue then caused us to get to this point. And I'm glad that you were open enough to come onto the platform and share this. And it's actually exciting, especially because sometimes you think it's only just a few people going through this. But when you realize through the comments and whenever you put out a topic that actually so many people need this, they need to understand. The women need to come in and understand the psyche of a man. And the men need to come in and understand that they do have a role to fulfill in a woman's life. But I'm not going to be too long. But what I want to know from you is what actually gave you the confidence to come in and love a strong woman. And my understanding is that a strong woman in this context would have been someone who is publicly achieved, who is well celebrated. And also, maybe you can also give us a context as to how you see a strong woman.
All right. Thank you for that, Ntate Nkunene. So I'd like to start things by introducing myself. Igama nguLuthando, Christopher Vuba. The nickname Chris is derived from my second name. I am born of a Xhosa mother and a Swati father. So that should give a bit of background to a bit of diversity, not only, I guess, in terms of the country we find ourselves in, but also tribally. And for those that want an African introduction, Eswatini ngumnyamande Chivakati odubanjinizulu. And then on my mom's side, Ngokhatebe, Otinkulu, Odlebentle Zombili. So I think, thank you for this platform. Thank you for creating this topic or this conversation. I had a lot of questions. Is this exclusively for men or is it open to women? So I just want to reiterate what I said. The target audience is men, but obviously women are welcome. I think it's very important for us to have this conversation in the spirit of understanding, right? And establishing understanding. We're not looking for agreement. We're not looking for people to buy in what my thinking is, my ideas, or what your thinking is, or what your ideas are around how a man is, around what a strong woman is, or a successful woman, or an achieved woman is. I think we're just having a conversation to establish understanding, and hopefully, I hope that this paves way for men to have more dialogue, and hopefully it gives a glimpse or some clarity to women on just the things that are important to men, the things that make them respond the way they do, the things that are understood in society as, oh, you know, men are intimidated, when I think men just don't understand enough. Men just don't have enough reference points on how do I approach, let alone date, be in a relationship, marry a woman that's successful, achieved. Just how do I approach such a woman? And when I come to that table, you know, is me, who I am, good enough? And for me, that's very important to land, because we live in a world where, and I suppose there's sort of inherent history that has led us to that world that we see, but it's a world that's not very kind or very unconditionally loving to a man. You know, I've heard this being thrown around that, you know, men are loved in according to what they can bring, or men matter in according to what they can provide, etc. And perhaps there's some merit to that, and we just have to look at, you know, just what builds confidence in men. A man that is out of employment, so in other words, out of economic empowerment to provide, his confidence levels, versus a man that does have a job, can provide for himself, can provide for others, just their confidence levels purely, not looking at anything else, just their confidence levels is a significant difference between the two, right? And that has a lot to do by what we are validated as men, right? The expectation. There's just some things that you're supposed to have or have figured out, or you need to have access to. And this sort of gives then some light to where the intimidation, I use that, you know, in inverted commas, because I think it's not always like, you know, it's not always intimidation, or it's not necessarily the case that it's intimidation, but I think it's just, like I said, there isn't enough reference for men to know how to approach women that are successful, that are achieved, that are independent in this day and age. So I just wanted to give that backdrop, and hopefully that just provides some basis as to how you'll steer this conversation, or at least in sharing my thoughts. So I think if I just reflect on my partner, wife, um, it was a conversation that I personally never made about who she is, what she has achieved. For me, I kept focus on what I saw.
Okay,
Um,
sorry, just before you go on there,
yeah.
how did you get to the point where you didn't look at what she has achieved and you just simply looked at her? And how do you separate that when you saw how did you separate that when you saw
Mhm.
her?
Good question. So perhaps, and this question makes me take a step back. So
Mm,
for me to get to that point, there's a lot of me work that I had to do. And part of that had been you're dealing your healing. I call healing, but it is anything which you see on your maternal and paternal side that need to deal with. So, for instance, in my specific case, I'm raised by a single mother, and my relationship with my father really commenced around the age of 16. And so you can imagine that 16-year vacuum. There's a lot of daddy issues that we call it, but
yeah,
I prefer to just name it issues that are created by a void of a non-present father. So you may have someone who has a father there also have daddy issues, right?
yes,
So that work sort of was the things that I worked on, and it's not you just slept the one side and you're A to go. It's an iteration. You're getting to know yourself. You become a young adult. There's varsity life. You get out of varsity, you start working. But all of that for me has been a journey in getting to know who I am, understanding the things that make me tick, understanding the things that I do not subscribe to, where do those things emanate from, understanding my maternal side, understanding my paternal side, what are the things that I'm inheriting from them, hereditary, and, being able then to form what my path and what will come after me, what they will take from me, and not just simply adopt like, utata wayengumntu onjena, so therefore I'm also going to be this person. Or mama wayesithi naye indoda mayibenje, right?
yeah,
So just accepting what is prescribed to you by your parents, by your uncles, aunts, or your grandparents. So I hope that gives you a sense of what I mean by heal.
yes,
And also that then helped me understand then what kind of partner do I would like, what kind of person do I see myself building a life with. And that really is then what helped me, or rather what paved my approach. That me, I'm here to understand, does this person align to my values? Does this
yeah,
person have an interest to build, what I'm interested in building? And if we can align on those two things, I'm happy to take the conversation further. So I was not
yeah,
interested in her placement in society. I was not interested in what she has done, has not done, what she has or does not have. So I get in a sort of ordinary day, it is very unorthodox to just have that mindset
yeah,
to that, like I said, we condition that, hey, we must, what are you bringing to the table to be able to earn a conversation with that person? I think for me, that isn't my mindset. And that is my approach to life in general, not just with life. I'm just not one person who believes that when connecting with a human, that we uphold the chips on their shoulders above the human connection. So that for me is sort of the mindset, what gives me the approach of this is what I'm approaching this person on, and it's then how I conduct the rest of the relationship from then on. That we are not validated by who we are, what we achieve, what we have, but rather who we are, like what makes us the person that we are. So I was interested in that, and for me, if I was met with someone who prizing or who's identity is in the things that they have or have achieved, then we're already not aligned on the two things that I mentioned, values and all together. So that's pretty much practically, that is, to your question, that is what then informed that this is what I'm approaching this person on. If we
Yeah.
agree on these two things, we can take it from there.
All right.
And yeah.
There's another aspect then that comes into play. When you've done all your homework, so you come in as the guy, you know what you want from a woman, you see what you want, and now when you've seen what you want and you go after the person, and then you realize that within the relationship, usually the person, either yourself or the other person, brings in their social status and their achievements. They bring that into the relationship. How would you, let's say hypothetically, had that happened in the relationship when it started, how would you have handled it? That suppose she was this multi-billionaire person, and now she brings that, I've got the money, I've got the resources, you don't. How would you have handled that situation had it arisen?
I'm having some side commentary here from the person you're referring to. Okay, that's a very good question. So for me, it's the same, Ziguse. I think for the dudes that are tuned in and are listening, and even the ones that watch later, I need for them to really understand and get when I say this is my method. And the thing is, I use this approach, or I stress this point because I know as men we are logical here. If things doesn't make sense logically, it's hard for us to get. That's why we have such a hard time understanding each other when it comes to the opposite sex. So for me, billionaire or non-billionaire, millionaire or non-millionaire, president or minister or CEO of this, for me, what I understand is at the end of the day, this is a woman. There are things that make them tick. There are things that they are into and want to do. And that's what, if we can connect on that, that is what this relationship would be. If our relationship is initiated on, I'm a billionaire and there are these things I want to do with you, there's already a deficit in that agreement because I'm not bringing billionaire status to that. So we're already not aligned. So we are going to have problems, right, in future. If there's an argument, there's something we disagree on, or there's a house you don't agree on, or there's a business decision we don't agree on, we are going to have a deficit. And one may argue, then that comes into play. And once that comes into play, there's just a split part that happens from there, whether at that particular conversation or disagreement, or it happens later. But at that point, when that comes into play, the division has already happened in that relationship. And I say this because my view of the need for a man to feel like he can provide, and I think what I mentioned to you in our conversation earlier this week is I correlated, and this is my view, I correlated to how a woman feels about her body or even her ability to bear a child, for those that, are interested in reproducing. But that's what I correlated to, because I think when we're trying to understand each other as men and women, we can't do, apples versus apples on the topic. We should do apples versus apples on how these topics makes us feel. And I can tell you, for a woman, when it comes to provide, that's not a thing for her, because it's not as central to their being, to their identity, and to what gives them confidence as it does for men. I can tell you, for men, whether they can, give a woman child or not, is not as central to their being, to their identity, and their confidence, as it is for a woman. So I hope that makes sense for the audience and to yourself. So the ability for a man to provide, when challenged, when tainted, it's so central to him that it's almost his being that is being teased or poked at. And the issue that we tend to have is then men, obviously, we have our defenses, and whether it is something that has happened early in his life or it's
Mm-hmm.
something that he witnessed with his parents where there was an argument and there was something thrown, you know, on the man's ability to provide or inability or lack thereof to provide, or comments that we hear, you know, flying. There's a set by Chris Rock. I love a lot of stand-up comedy. I think there's a lot
Yeah.
of wisdom that comes out of the jokes and laughter. And he mentions how his grandmother would make comments such as, "A broke man is like a broke hand, right? It's useless." So things like that start to form in the identity of the man, that when it comes to then a conversation where it's about the ability to provide, or rather the status of your, you know, of how much you can provide. Going back to your question about, you know, the woman is a billionaire and you're not. It
Yeah.
is something that's very central to them. It is something that is going to taint how confident they feel about themselves. So my advice to ladies is usually understand that and focus just on understanding. I'm not saying you should change, you should realign yourself in how you do things or say things, but understand, because I believe in the understanding you then, how then does that inform your approach to things. There's something that I saw in something that I watched that my dad sent last week, which I think is very practical, yet it yields the point. I've got here this object. You can just tell me what you can read.
Nature's gold honey.
All right. So that's what you can read, right? And what I
Yeah.
can read, a bunch of small font, I can see something about natural process for raw honey to crystallize. And this is pretty much how understanding works, right?
Yeah.
As we continue the conversation, we're building slowly, you know, the reach where I start to come around to see what you see on your side, and you starting to come around to see what's on my side. And that's how I usually use as my starting point, especially when we disagree, we don't get each other. I'm like, I just want to understand. Because when I understand, it definitely can steer how then we progress and start to move forward. So it's the first thing that I advise ladies. For the dudes, I think go back and understand what are the things that establish your confidence. And if your confidence is etched in who you are in terms of what you can provide or what you have or what you own, tear that down and look at who you are. Look at the talents that you have. Look at the strengths that you bring to any sort of, you know, relationship, institution. Look at, if you're in a job environment, look at the things that people applaud you on. Look at the things that you know comes naturally to you. And let that build up as your confidence. And let
Yeah.
that be what you then rest on when it comes to, this is what I'm confident in, right?
I just want to pause there in terms of what 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 most people get in terms of affirmation, respect, um, how they are served out there in the world, how they are served at work, how they are also feared at work. They tend to take that and want to bring that into their personal relationship, into their relationship with their partner.
Yeah.
And I've seen that a lot of times that tends to create disharmony in the relationship. Now, what would cause, maybe let's put it this way, what would cause someone to take what is out there and use it in the relationship to have some sort of what they feel is relevance?
Yeah. Okay, Zbusa. I'm very notorious for being brutally honest.
Please do.
So I usually say, so for me, that is just, it's a validation issue, right? And it goes back to what I was saying earlier. If you're dealing with someone whose validation sits in who they are at work, what they've achieved at work, what their position or title is at work, or anywhere
Yeah.
else, be, in this particular group. It could be the church, it could be a NPO, whatever it is. If titles and things that community societies know you by is your validation that you then bring into a relationship, we already have a problem, right? So same thing that I was describing around what men should go back and sort of build their confidence or establish their confidence in is
Yeah.
partner. In this relationship, we are that person that we've come to know and understand, right?
Yeah.
Is this person that he doesn't like this, whatever. And that outside world is then exists in that outside world, right?
Yeah.
An analogy I like to think of is that when you get home and you're in your private space, right? Whatever you wear to work, if it's uniform, it's uniform. If it's formal clothing, whatever it is, the first thing you do, you take that off. And that for me is sort of assimilates what should be in a relationship is that when you get into that space, you take off what interacts with that outside world. And then we exist as who we are to each other. And obviously in your relationship or your marriage, you are naked to each other, so you can be open in who you are. So bring your vulnerability, etc. And for me, what I say to that is that don't be like that validation shouldn't exist in your relationship. And when you're dealing with someone whose validation is being sort of, you know, brought into that space, it should be addressed accordingly because we already have a problem, like I said, and in the same way where, for men as well, where it becomes about, this is what they bring, this is what they yield, we already have a problem because then we are bringing that external environment into this intimate space. And
Yeah.
what it does then, it does what I said earlier, it creates the divide and already we start moving in opposite directions.
You mentioned something now when you talk about taking external validation and bringing it in. I'm reminded of this analogy of where do you eat? Not necessarily literally where do you eat, but in a figurative sense. Do you go and take food outside and then bring it in the home and expect that same food to be cooked in the home the same way you get it outside? Or another part is where do you eat in terms of where do you get your validation? If
Yep.
you take complete validation from strangers or from colleagues outside and you bring it in the home and you expect the same from the home, it's basically you eating your food outside and then still expecting that same food to have it in the home, of which that's not really always possible with every relationship.
Mm, mm. Yeah, no, you're spot on, and I love that analogy. And it distorts the two of you, right? I remember us having this conversation once, and it was around compliments and you know receiving the compliment like she'd be dressed very nice. The first compliment doesn't come from me at home; it's in that sort of external space, and I remember thinking, wow, okay, I can go on the defense in this conversation, or I can rather pause and try and understand where she's coming from. And for me, it was something that when I just focused on listening and understanding, I then understood, oh, what my role is. Like, oh, this is what my role is here. I need to sort of give that confidence so that when that external environment starts to interact, with that, there's already that first seed and basis and perspective that she has, and and it's important to know how to keep those environments separate, right? And I think for a lot of us, it's a journey because they're not something that's going to be overnight or you read about it in some book. It's a journey to get into it, and it starts by practicing, right? One of my favorite quotes is awareness precedes choice.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
so in being self-aware, you choose better, right? So you can say something to me, and I can grab onto one word in the whole thing that you have said, and it's not because I do not listen to the rest of what you said. That particular word has a trigger for me, and that's why I hook on it. And therefore, my response to you is on that because of my trigger, not because of anything wrong that you said.
Yes.
And when I then practice self-awareness, I'm able to pause and recognize, wait, this word is a trigger for me. That's not what Uzibuse is saying. Let me focus on what he's actually saying, take that in, and maybe just to make sure I understand correctly, okay, is this what you mean by this? And you're able to clarify that and then be able to respond. And for me, that's how you grow. And a lot of people in relationships or marriages, when we have issues, we make it about the other person.
Yeah.
When you find that when you focus on yourself and this is how I show up on this topic and it's an issue and you pay attention to that, you are able to better come to that conversation, and guide, obviously, as you practice that self-awareness and get to a point where you guys are able to resolve and understand each other better.
Yeah. When you started, you defined who you were. And in defining who you were, you spoke about your father's, your paternal side, and then you also spoke about your maternal side. Now, what I've seen that we tend to forget when we engage, as in now, people are seeing you and I on the screen. And when they're seeing you and I on the screen, they forget, or there's something else that they don't see. What they don't see are all the people who have contributed to me being who I am today and the opinions that I have. Similarly to yourself, everyone whom you engaged with from the moment you understood and could receive and retain information, you've been able to just grasp from those people the society where you grew up in, right up until this point. Now, we tend to forget that whenever I'm speaking or whenever we are engaging, we may not necessarily be engaging with each other now, but we may be engaging with each other's past and with whoever else has influenced us, including our pain. Now, what I want us to also focus on as we continue the discussion is I want us to also go back into the aspect of values, because I believe when one is entrenched in their values, it can either make or break the relationship. Most people come into the relationship and they come in with the mentality of, this is who I am and you cannot change me. It's either you accept me or you don't, right? And just for a second, just like us to pause and acknowledge a few inputs that we've received. I just want to check the questions. So Mohu, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this username, this handle correctly. It's MOGES Stana is asking how would one navigate the discussion of starting a family and having a present partner when in the midst of being consumed by a career? I think that's one that we can take note of for now. And then Nontle is asking for part 2 of the conversation, and maybe that's what we can come back to and address at the end. Let me see. Nontle then comes back with another question. Do you ever feel that there is an element of competition when it comes to success? And how do you want to avoid that? I think those are the things that I'd want us to touch on, including the questions, as well as, over and above that, defining what success is. Because at some point, I believe success tends to be subjective rather than objective.
Yeah.
What?
Spot on. Spot on. I think we get deluded by success in how it's modeled to us by whether it's media or people that we follow, role models or whatever sort of people that we see as successful. So I find success, when we define someone is successful, is relative. For me, success is the journey towards whatever I'm trying to reach. The fact that I'm still on that journey, failures that you find, and being able to still be on course towards what you want to achieve. But let me tackle Nonte's question first.
Yeah.
So partnership, right? That is what that is one of the bedrocks of our relationship or our marriage. And in a partnership, right? If I'm playing with Uzibuse a doubles tennis match, right? When the score is ticking, you know, that score doesn't show the opponents that we're playing, and then it shows Zibuse contributed so many points, and then Lutan contributed so many points. It's a point to the team.
Yes.
And I think when it comes to that, and this is a very, I think, under sort of, we don't pay enough attention to this, but it's a very silent sort of, I'd say, demon. When it comes to this matter of success and in us pulling together, you know, and pushing each other, and no matter how much the other one is maybe succeeding in what they are going after, being still there and not seeing it as a, oh, he's enjoying a lot more wins than I am, or vice versa, she's enjoying more wins than I am. And I think when the two of you get aligned on partnership, you know, when she achieves, we achieve. We
Yes.
have household weights, as simple as that. You know, when he achieves, we achieve. And I think you need to find deliberate ways to keep to sort of hold each other accountable to that, and to keep that the spur of your relationship. The moment there is a, you know, oh, it's all me, I think that's when you start to lose focus. And you should have an honest enough relationship to be able to pause right there and call the other person out that this is a partnership, you know. Yes, you are being celebrated, but we are winning together, right? So that would be my answer on the competition piece. The one that Mooks was asking around, you know, planning for family, yet there's a career. I always say to my wife that life doesn't happen to you, right? Or rather, what the circumstance, you're not a victim of your circumstances. Thank you. I just had to look at her to remember what I actually said to her. Yeah, you're not just a victim of the circumstances that you're in, right? We take decisions daily, as we'll say, we make choices, right? You choose that job that you are in, right? You applied, you got the job, you got appointed. Now this job has challenges, you know, you complain. No, you made that choice. It's part of your decision or the consequence of your decision. So I always say that we're not victim of those circumstances, for like based on that. So in a similar way, my advice is if we are in a relationship or we are married to each other and my career is there, but we want to start a family, right? Those decisions were there, and I need to find a way to make it work. So prioritize starting a family, and how do I find a way to balance then the career with this venture that I'm starting? And I find that it is not a singular conversation. So if I understand Moose's question correctly, both of you are focused on careers, but you want to start a family. I think it's the two of you coming to a standstill and figuring out, okay, cool, this is going to mean this for you, because fortunately one person is affected by this for 9 months. This is what it's going to mean for me. All right, let's plan out what that means in terms of the commitment and the help we need to offer each other. Then what does that mean for our careers, right? And then align the decision to, you know, this is how you guys are going to figure out and work out together, you know, the fact introducing children to your relationship, so that ever down the line, you know, there isn't but this was your decision, or, you know, but this is what you wanted. It's always, no, we decided this together. We thought through every single thing in terms of impact. This is what will change. This is how our career will fit in. This is how this passion project that you have will fit in, or maybe we'll take a pause. But align on what does this decision of starting a family mean, and what is its impact on our respective environments, bring that together, and then pay that way. That for me, I think, is the sort of best way I can advise. We haven't had children yet, but we have started things like a business together. And I can tell you that's how we came together on it, that this is your reality, this is my reality. Okay, how do we bring those together and make this thing work? How do
Yeah.
you, who takes what responsibility? And this is then what we see. And whenever there's difficulty, we remind each other of, hey, we both committed to this, you know. It wasn't one person who woke up and said, it would be a great idea to have a business. So I think for me, using my own life and marriage as a relationship, that is what I can advise on. That's how you figure out these difficult sort of things to navigate. But like I said, your career being there and the desire to want to start a family is all things that we took decisions, right? You took a decision to be committed to this career and be chasing whatever it is in that career, but also want, a family. It's not the one was just asked of you and you never had that intent. So I think that's always a starting point that I prefer to use. And in how we do that is figure out together, because what tends to happen is whether it is during the pregnancy, when the child is born, when the child exists, one or the other person is always secretly at the back of their mind, holding the other person to judgment that this was your decision, this is what you wanted. And that's why sometimes you will see things like that come up when there's really a bad fight and it's about you wanted this, right? Mm-hmm. So I always say that rather align on that decision. If you can't align, take the time until you can align, because you don't ever want a situation where the other person is now being blamed for why we find ourselves here.
So thank you for that. It's a lot of wisdom that's flowing. It also reminds me of the conversation that we had over the phone. You know, it could have just gone on and on and on. But now I want us to backtrack a little bit to the whole purpose of this particular conversation. Here I am, a guy meeting a woman who has achieved, right? I've never known any values in my life. I'm a self-made man. Here I am, I'm achieved. I think my money can do all that I want. But here is this woman, and I have this belief that as a man, I'm the provider. I'm the one who's supposed to provide for her. I'm the one who's supposed to buy the car for her. I'm the one who's supposed to pay the bond. The issue of us doing joint applications on the home loan does not even come into the discussion. It all has to be on me, right? But now you meet this woman. She's an independent woman. She can take care of her own bills. She can buy her own house, her own cars. How do you find yourself having that confidence? And maybe also putting aside everything else and say, but how do I fit into this woman's life? How do I become a man but not a chauvinist? How do I become a man but not a hypocrite or too patriarchal or too domineering? How do I become a partner in the life of people? Because I don't want somebody watching and listening to this going back and thinking, okay, I've heard these guys talk, but all they were doing is just talking things that are there, but nothing that is conclusive, nothing that is practical that I can take away. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was actually looking forward for this kind of question. So when we thought about, maybe we should get married, we had a very deep conversation around, I'm going to refer to it as templates, and all I'm trying to say is, there's a model that you want to follow, and I'll call it templates. So there is the template of I'm the provider, you are the woman, and you stay at home, you make the home, there'll be children, you look after the family, and that's how we build what we want. The other template is, I'm the provider, and you do what you're passionate about, and we then work together to then or we come together on starting a family, and but the rest of the time you go and we'll get someone to look after the kids and help raise the kids, but you follow your dreams. There's the model or there's the template that says, okay, we come together and we're gonna hustle together. You are your own person with your career or your passion and ambitions, and I have mine, and we gonna figure it out together. And when it comes to a family, it's a partnership. Then there's a template where the woman is the provider, where the man is gonna do his passion, or whatever he's passionate about, and she'll support him. And whenever there's family considerations, they'll figure that out together. And then the last one is she is the provider, and he is the stay-at-home dad, and sort of like same as a stay-at-home mom, who then helps figure out make the home, raise the kids, etc. Now, all these templates, they're equal to each other, right? There isn't one that's more superior or less inferior to the other. However, we tend to find issues around the patriarchal play, right?
Yeah.
Some of these templates. And I think what both parties, both the man and the woman, need to recognize within themselves are those issues, right? But you can have the patriarchal play as well in the ones where we both work and we both chase our careers and our ambitions. You can find it there as well, right? But it's more prevalent in some of these other templates. But like I said, these templates are equal to each other, and whatever the deterrence, I'm going to call it deterrence, but in other words, the things that hold us back or that make this thing not work, like the patriarchal. Let's expand on what patriarchal play is. When I say patriarchal play, I'm talking about I'm the man, I provide, but I'm the man, there's certain things only I as the man do and you can't do. And it even sometimes reaches extent of I tell you what to do. And so there's a bit of a control factor that is in there. There is a power factor that is unbalanced in there. And those are all things that sort of really what plays or exists in this patriarchal play. I personally am not for any patriarchal existence in how we do partnership or a relationship, marriage. And the sooner you deal or sort of get yourself out of that thinking, the better. Because then it helps you see the person for who they are and as your equal partner, regardless of which template you follow. So that's the other thing I want to say in that, is that regardless of which template, you guys are still equals, right? There isn't one that holds more power in the relationship purely because of their role in the templates that I've sort of explained. And I think though that's how I think about it, and that's what I think helps guide both parties. And like I said, both parties will be self-aware enough to identify those things, because I may say that, okay, men patriarchal play and it's for them only to sort of, assess that, but women too. You may have a woman who's coming into a relationship or a marriage with a patriarchal mindset. You are supposed to do this because you're a man. I'm supposed to because you're a man. So those are also problematic, right? So those also need to be recognized and dealt with accordingly. And it's when you guys are able to then see that and align that either of these models that you guys choose or templates that you choose for your partnership, relationship, or marriage, right? Whichever template, you guys are equals in that, right? That's always the starting base. You guys have aligned on, values. If like part of your question was, there's no sort of value structure that I subscribe to. Talk about that, I do not have, these values, but let me understand what's values to her. And in that happening, I can already see whether there's things I agree with or not, and have that conversation out. And that's how you then do the alignment, which I mentioned earlier in the conversation. And like I said, all these templates equal to each other. You guys are equals in that conversation. You align or build that understanding of each other to get to an alignment. And that's what you want to move off. Because the reason why I'm so deliberate about what you build on and being aligned is that when things get tough and things you can't understand, you can't figure out, or there's frustration, whatever it is, that is what balances you and brings you to a common ground where you guys can connect, because there's that understanding that you at least have. So even if I'm like, we've grown so much apart that, the love is starting to deteriorate, that's always the foundation you can come back on. And if that can no longer hold, then, pretty much then what was this unit is no longer a unit. Yeah. And I think it's important to put in that foundation the things that will sustain you, not so much what Oprah wrote in a book, or this one wrote in that book, or so and so said, but like you two coming together and being able to understand each other, where you come from, what you come from, and these are the values. This is why I hold these as values, and align on that. Align on your goals and dreams. Align on, do you want a family or don't you want a family?
Yeah.
And then that be the basis then that you say, okay, this is how we're doing this partnership. And when it comes to a marriage, you may decide on either of these templates. In those templates, you guys are equal to each other, and that's what you guys hold each other accountable to. But we need to move away from the mind frame of, we can assume or that, women equality, or I need to be recognized as a woman. But then there's still mindset or things that you subscribe to that actually drives the patriarchal thinking or way of doing things. So, in the same with the man as well. So I think for me, those are very important things to have in a conversation and understand the other person where they come from.
Awesome. Okay, I see there's another question here from Sefako. It says, should we not start from the premise that we are both human beings, regardless of the nature of gender, and start looking at how best we can make life easier for both, and how do we get bring happiness?
Sure. I think this may have been something that I covered earlier when you were asking, what made me approach Sonova with sort of, removing from her everything that she has achieved, etc. Where I said that the basis for me was that she's human, she's someone I'm attracted to. These are the things that I'm looking for in a partner. This is what I want to build for my life, and that's what we connect on. If we connect on that, then sure, the conversation can then grow from that, and I get to know her better, and then I start to really get to know her and understand the things that drive her, and why she's why she has these goals and dreams that she has, so that I understand how I can best support her towards that. That's really this is personally what I feel is something that works. It may not work for everyone. For other people may be more magical. They fall in love and then have this kind of rational thinking and rational conversation. Other people may have the extreme of this rational conversation. I know of a situation where date one, it was, a list of questions, around, your financial status, do you want kids? So and none of these are wrong. I actually respect people that are very deliberate in understanding those specifics up front rather than surprises later, because how I see it, that's just someone who is laying down things that are important for them to know up front, rather than sort of let's find it out along the way. So I hope that answers Sapako's question.
Awesome. Now, in your last comment, you mentioned something that's very important: finding things out along. I think a lot of people tend to feel lonely when they are alone, and then they want somebody to come into their lives so that the loneliness can go away. And then hook, line, and sinker, here they are with someone. They don't know this person. But hey, what the heck? Let's try to find things and sort things out along the way. Um, how do we talk to them? How do we talk to the 12-year-old who's starting to recognize that there are such things as relationships? And how do we talk to the 60-year-old who's just feeling, I just need a partner. I just need someone to just ngihlekisane naye. How do we talk to that in terms of, let's sort things out as we go along?
Like I said, there are people that have different approaches to this thing. Some people want the magic to happen. I call it the magic. They want, let's just love on each other, and then we'll have this more rational, I think, conversation and understanding. And this is where your knowledge of self is very important. And earlier in our conversation, I said to you that I spend time first to just work on me, understand me, right? Because I know I'm not a person for find out along the way, right? But one of my friends, very good friend of mine, he is that person find things along the
Yeah,
way. He's okay with that and believes in almost like this organic way of getting to know the person. And if there's something along the way, it's part of it. I'm not that person. Well, at least when it comes to relationships. So I've
yeah,
recognized early on, like, hi, surprises, once I've decided that we can put this into first gear and get going, I'm not that person. So again, I think your knowledge of self helps sort of determine that. And if you're not someone that's for find out things along the way, then probably don't do it, because you're likely to have some disappointment that is not so much the other person's doing, but I think you just not being discerning enough on what you as a person are inclined to and not inclined to. I don't think there's a perfect way to find love. I don't think there's a perfect or ideal way to discover that there's something deeper with someone, or there's a certain way you feel with someone. I think the points that I'm sharing this evening is just around when you're establishing something with someone and you feel like it can go somewhere long term, or it goes somewhere that you desired. I think it's important to just pause and have a conversation that aligns you with that person on those things that are key. And when you are entering any relationship, right, and you don't know yourself well enough, it's already a risk, because then I can, come to person A and see, this one, grew up without a dad, so any sort of affection and love I show this person, they will definitely fall for me. And all I have to do is just do that, right? Or I come to this person, right? I can see this guy, he had